then you kind of lose who you are. If your job is to kind of freely point out that these people suck and you find out that maybe they don't, you might lose an audience. You might you might end up like if you were going and I've seen it on your show when you veer.
I've lost audience. Before many times, and I don't care. I care because it'd be great if it didn't happen.
Brace yourself. Things got intense on Bill Maher's Club Random podcast in a showdown you won't believe. Picture this: Bill Maher, never one to hold back, going toe-to-toe with Gutfeld, the undisputed king of controversy. The topic: woke culture and cancel culture. Two of the most divisive issues of our time. From the moment they started, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Maher argued that today's ultra-woke climate has created a culture of fear, where people second-guess every word they say. Gutfeld, never one to back down, pushed right back, turning the conversation into a verbal sparring match filled with sharp jabs and unfiltered opinions. It was raw, explosive, and impossible to ignore. If you love debates that aren't afraid to push boundaries, this is one you need to watch.
Was about, and then some of them, I watched Rain Man again. I thought it held up pretty well, but again, you couldn't make it because, like, he says the R word a million times. It's like that kind of stuff. We're like in kindergarten now, where we have to say pee-pee and poo-poo and R word. And
Animal House. I think Animal House still holds up, but you could not do that movie, especially in the nightclub scene.
Oh.
When do you mind if we dance with your dates? That whole thing would never happen. It would never happen. That's the first time I ever saw breasts.
But it's every movie. It's every movie.
Yeah.
It's any movie made even 10 years ago, and there's something there that you if you really examine who you are, you probably are not offended at all. We all laughed at this stuff and it wasn't terribly, we know when something's terribly offensive. But when you hear it now in 2023, you hunch up because you know, not because of it itself, but because you know the reaction it will cause.
Yes.
You know you're going to have to listen to people bitching about this and posturing and pretending they're so offended and it's so terrible. And that's what's going to be so.
And they're not. That's the thing. They're not offended.
Well,
they're not. No one's really offended, I think.
Well,
because you can, like, when you said.
People are offended and some things are offensive.
Yeah, but it's kind of like when I said, like, you Google people who are dead. When you're offensive, if you just waited 10 seconds.
Gutfeld isn't pulling any punches when it comes to exposing the contradictions of political correctness. Get ready. This is one fiery debate you won't want to miss. If you appreciate content that pushes back against the status quo and isn't afraid to speak the truth, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Done? Great. Now let's get into it. What started as a routine episode of Club Random turned into an explosive battle of ideas. Bill Maher and Gutfeld, two powerhouses in political commentary, sat down expecting a typical conversation, but this was anything but typical. The discussion quickly escalated into a heated debate where no punches were pulled and no opinions were sugarcoated. At the center of the clash, woke culture and its chilling effect on free speech. Maher kicked things off with a concern that many hesitate to express openly. He fears losing his audience if he doesn't conform to every progressive stance that's trending today.
Like, if your job is to kind of freely point out that these people suck and you find out that maybe they don't, you might lose an audience. You might you might end up like if you were going and I've seen it on your show when you veer.
I've lost audience. Before many times, and I don't care. I care because it'd be great if it didn't happen. But my real bond with my audience is that I never pull a punch.
Yeah.
And I never. I have lost people who were think I'm conservative now, and I have not changed, I don't think, at all.
No.
I think the politics has changed and the people have changed, but I don't think that it makes me a conservative to, think things that are crazy are crazy.
Yeah.
And forcing me to say so doesn't help.
Yeah.
There's just too much forced conformity.
Yeah.
And there's no thinking out loud.
Yeah.
That's not allowed.
It's like walking on a tightrope, right? Say the wrong thing and boom, you're canceled.
Instead, they get on Twitter and then they create this kind of like mob
Well-
reaction. And then people are so bored and they're so distracted that this is, and also it's a personal power thing. It's like, if I don't have any power in my world, at least on here, I can exert some kind of power and get somebody to apologize. And it feels good. It feels good if I can get 1,000 retweets that Bill Maher said this and what an asshole, and then like it happens. It's like, but your life doesn't change. My life doesn't change by doing that, but I feel like I did something. And I think that's been driving a lot of this shit.
The phone made people assholes.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah.
It allows you to just be so fucking cowardly, anonymous, shady, fake, all these shitty qualities it brought out in people.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was always seen as kind of a cynic about humans, I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it turns out that humans are not good people.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know. Well, we're definitely sinners.
It's like balancing on a razor's edge. One wrong word, and just like that, you're erased.
It's a bathroom wall. It's a bathroom wall. So you can write things on it and not be held accountable. But
it has repercussions, and a bathroom wall doesn't.
Yeah, it does. It destroys
all
careers.
You do is go in there and roll your eyes because you're reading this.
Do you remember that girl that made that joke who, before she was leaving to fly to South Africa?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and she said, I hope I don't get AIDS. That's a joke about America. And about how we don't care about, and I remember that was the first Twitter.
Yeah.
I think it's the first cancel culture moment.
I mean, if they haven't made a movie about it, they should.
Yeah.
Because by the time she got off the plane, her life was over.
There were people at the airport waiting for her because it felt so good to get somebody. And I can't remember her name, but she, I don't like what happened to her. I'm going to Google her when we're done.
No, there used to be, if something like that happened, I think there was this allowance for someone to then go, oh, fuck, okay, you got me. It was a brain fart. I'm sorry, you're right. That was a shitty thing to do. And that was that.
Yeah.
And that should be all that, because what I hate is the bad faith of people who know that this person isn't a horrible person, but I'm going to wreck your life anyway. Because of this one misstep and not a hanging offense.
Yeah.
Especially if you own it. But now with these people, it's never good enough.
Yeah. I would say that.
Just like blood.
I would say that I was guilty of that, though. Like, in the beginning, it's when some.
Just like that, Gutfeld wasn't backing down. To him, the fear of audience backlash was nothing but an illusion, a cage that needed to be broken. He practically threw down the gauntlet, challenging Maher's stance and arguing that authenticity should always trump popularity. In Gutfeld's eyes, the so-called woke mob isn't driven by real outrage. It's a power play, a game of control disguised as activism. He sees them not as a force for change, but as digital puppeteers, pulling the strings of social media, making people dance to their tune, all for a fleeting hit of likes and retweets.
The majority of the years that I've done real time from the same studio at CBS here in Hollywood, 20 years, the first, I would say, at least 15, I was probably fighting with the audience, at least once a show. It was very rare I had an audience that didn't like ooh and ah something. Then somebody did some, part of it was the pandemic. We had to get a smaller audience.
Right.
And so somehow they knew how to get rid of just the groaners.
Yeah.
And so we stuck with it even after the pandemic ended, and we could have as many as we want now. But I was like, no, I'd much rather have this half filled, but they're the good people who they can laugh at both sides.
Right.
They cheer both things. They cheer common sense.
Yeah.
And the fireworks? They just kept coming. The conversation took a sharp turn into the world of censorship and comedy, territory both men know all too well. Gutfeld wasted no time ripping into modern restrictions on humor, likening them to stripping comedy of its very soul. It's like being back in kindergarten, he quipped, except now the playground is Twitter, and everyone's a self-declared vigilante wielding hashtags instead of jump ropes. But what made the exchange even more compelling was watching Bill Maher wrestle with his own contradictions. Known for his fearless takes and razor-sharp wit, Maher found himself reflecting on how comedy and free speech have evolved, and not always in ways he supports. The very landscape that once rewarded unfiltered humor is now filled with invisible tripwires, forcing comedians to navigate a minefield of outrage. Maher's internal conflict was undeniable. As someone who built his career pushing boundaries, he seemed torn between defending comedy's rebellious spirit and acknowledging the ever-tightening grip of social scrutiny. The irony, the very debates he once led about free speech now seem to have new, unexpected consequences, even for him. But here's the real question: is comedy truly under siege, or is this just another chapter in its constant evolution? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is far from over.
That you disagree with, when you said it was like you take them at their worst intentions, not their best. Everything that's going on right now in our lives is based on people taking the worst intention.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter if you're a conservative and you don't like liberals, you will take the worst example of a liberal, and a liberal will take the worst example of a conservative, and they both are almost identical. Like the squad is the same as whoever you want to call on the conservative side. They're exactly the same.
There is a lot of that.
Yeah, and it's. I mean. And the thing is, it's really funny when like I make fun of like Ilhan Omar, and then she'll say something that I agree with, and I'm like
what?
She was pretty good. That's a good question. There were two things that she said. She was pissed off about what was going on in Palestine, not Palestine, but Palestine.
Oh,
and, yeah.
I'm glad
it wasn't Palestine.
I was.
But she was talking about but there were some other things that she said that I thought were like, wow, that's pretty libertarian, because generally she's kind of scary, but like maybe she's not as bad as I think she is. But what happens if you start feeling that way about everybody? Then you kind of lose who you are.
Here was a rare moment of honesty. Bill Maher openly admitting that public perception affects him. Speaking with Greg Gutfeld, he confessed that his audience's reactions often leave him feeling conflicted. One unexpected comment, and suddenly he's branded a conservative Gutfeld, unfazed, didn't let the moment slide. Instead, he pressed the issue, arguing that Maher's own hesitation only reinforces the very culture he criticizes. By constantly tiptoeing around controversy, Gutfeld claimed Maher was unintentionally legitimizing the outrage cycle he despises. It was a bold critique, and he didn't hold back. But this debate wasn't just about cancel culture or comedy, it was about something deeper. Gutfeld painted a picture of a society losing its backbone, where moral righteousness is weaponized, and online mobs dictate the boundaries of acceptable discourse. The message? Fear of backlash has become the new form of control. Maher's internal struggle was clear. A comedian who once prided himself on pushing boundaries now finds himself navigating an era obsessed with drawing them. He reflected on past controversies, moments where his audience turned on him, and admitted that the constant risk of alienation weighs heavily on him. Meanwhile, Gutfeld took a hardline stance. Authenticity should never be sacrificed to satisfy what he sees as performative outrage. To him, the real problem isn't about who gets offended, it's about the illusion that offense always equates to harm. Giving in to that illusion, he argued, only fuels a culture of fear and conformity. Their conversation highlighted an undeniable contrast. Maher, cautious and introspective, struggled with the tension between truth and audience expectations. Gutfeld, on the other hand, bulldozed through with unapologetic bluntness, challenging the idea that we must constantly walk on eggshells to avoid controversy. Then, the discussion took a sharp turn into politics. Maher tried to balance his critiques of both the left and the right, but Gutfeld wasn't buying it. He pointed out the irony, how some people will defend the indefensible just to stay aligned with the so-called acceptable narrative. It was a fiery clash of ideologies, packed with humor, sarcasm, and hard truths. Some might say Gutfeld exposed the very pressure points that make Maher uncomfortable, while others would argue it was simply two outspoken men dissecting the absurdity of modern discourse. Either way, the conversation left no stone unturned. It was a reminder that free speech isn't just about having the right to speak. It's about having the courage to do so, no matter who's listening. So what's your take? Did Gutfeld make a strong case? Or is Maher right to be cautious? Drop your thoughts below and let's get the conversation started.